I'm Tom Dykstra. I teach 5th grade at Pleasant Valley School, and I'm happy to introduce my class to do Saluting New Readers.
Hi, my name is Brittany, and I'm going to be reading Pippi Goes on Board by Alfred Lindgren. If a stranger should come to a certain little Swedish town and should happen one day to find himself at a certain spot on the edge of it, he would see Villa Villa Luca. Not that the cottage is much to look at, it's rather a ramshackle old place with a tangled garden around it. But it would be natural for a stranger to pause and wonder who lived there and why there was a horse on the porch. If it was evening and beginning to get dark, and if she caught a glimpse of the little girl strolling around in the garden looking as if she had no idea of going to bed, he might think, "Now I wonder why the little girl's mother doesn't see that she's going to bed. All the other children are fast asleep by this time of night." If the little girl came to the gate, as she would almost certainly do because she liked talking to other people, then he would be able to take a good look at her, and he would very likely think, "She's one of the most freckled and red-haired children I've ever seen." Later on, he would probably think freckles and red hair are really very nice. That is, if the person who has them looks as happy as this child does. Any stranger would probably be interested to know the name of this little redhead sauntering around by herself in the twilight. And she would ask, "What's your name?" And she'd answer gaily, "My name's Pipiladia Delicestia, Windowshade Mackermit, Ephraim's daughter Longstocking. Daughter of Captain Ephraim Longstocking, formerly the terror of sea, now Cannonball King. But everybody calls me Pippi." She really believed it when she said her father was a Cannonball King, because if he had once been blown overboard and had vanished from sight when he and Pippi were sailing on sea. If you want to know more about this book, check it out at your local library. Thank you for listening to me read.
My name is Daniel Cook, and I am reading Ghosts of the Old West by Earl Murray. The strange case of unlocked doors grew to be more chilling to the caretaker. Noises upstairs on the second floor or in the attic would occur when he was making his rounds. Often the sounds could be heard in the daytime as well, but numerous investigations showed no one around nor anything inanimate that might have fallen or tumbled down the stairs. Whoever was within the walls of quarters A was invisible. One night it really got to me. Caligari says, "I was making my rounds with my flashlight when I entered quarters A and locked the front door of the first part of the building. Then I got 10 feet from the back door and suddenly I felt someone grab me, slap me on the back. I swung the flashlight around real hard to hit whoever had grabbed me, and there was nothing there." It happened several more times before Caligari decided he had to do something about it apart from reporting it. Who would believe him? It occurred to him to give the precinct a name and see if he could communicate with whomever or whatever it was. Caligari named the ghost George. You might think I'm crazy, but I'd say to him, "George, now if you want to go out or come in, you do it before I lock the door." "Okay, I have to keep these doors locked." The approach seemed to work. Caligari had less trouble keeping the doors locked after that, but it seemed that George would either forget or go back to his mischievous ways, and on occasion Caligari would have to remind the spiritual precincts about the doors. The ghost in the captain's quarters seems to have an officer's personality. It appeared to want control of the structure. This was apparently still is true of another one of the famous buildings on the grounds A, a structure called Old Bedlam. If you want, thank you for Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to hear the rest of this story, check it out at your local library.
Hello, my name is Maxwell Cordes, and I'm going to be reading The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis. Chapter 8, The News the Eagle Brought. In the shadow of the trees on the far side of the clearing, something was moving. It was gliding very slowly northward. At first glance, you might have mistaken it for smoke, for it was gray, and you could see things through it. But the deathly smell was not the smell of smoke. Also, the thing kept its shape instead of billowing and curling as smoke would have done. It was roughly the shape of a man, but it had the head of a bird, some bird of prey with a cruel curved beak. It had 4 arms, which it held high above its head, stretching them northward as if it wanted to snatch all of Narnia in its grip. And its fingers, all 20 of them, were curved like its beak and had long, pointed, bird-like claws instead of nails. It floated on the grass instead of walking, and the grass seemed to wither beneath it. After one look at it, Puzzle gave a screaming bray and darted into the tower, and Jill, who is no coward as you know, hid her face in her hands and shut out the sight of it. The others watched it for perhaps a minute, until it steamed away into the thicker trees on the other right of the forest. Then the sun came out again, and the birds once more began to sing. Everyone started breathing properly again, and they moved. They had all been still as statues while it was in sight. "What was it?" said Eustace in a whisper. "I have seen it once before," said Tyrone, "but that time it was carved in stone and overlaid with gold, and had solid diamonds for eyes. It was when I was no older than thou, and I had gone as a guest to Sork's court in Tashbent. He took me to the great temple of Tash. There I saw it, carved above the altar." "Then that thing was Tash?" said Eustace. But instead of answering him, Tyrone slipped his arm behind Jill's shoulders and said, "How is it with you, lady?" All right," said Jill, taking her hands away from her pale face and trying to smile. "I'm all right. It only made me feel a little sick for a moment." "It seems, then," said the unicorn, "that there is a real Tash after all." "Yes," said the dwarf, "and the fool of an ape who didn't believe in Tash will get more than he bargained for. He called for Tash, and Tash has come." Thank you for listening to me read. If you'd like to know what happens next, visit your local library and check it out.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Davis, and I'm reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. "Can you believe our luck?" said Ron, miserably bending down to pick up Scabbers, his mouse. "Of all the trees we could have hit, we had to get the one that hits back." He glanced over his shoulder at the ancient tree, which was still flailing its branches threateningly. "Come on," said Harry wearily. "We better get up to the school." It wasn't all the triumphant arrival they had pictured. Stiff, cold, and bruised, they seized the ends of their trunks and began dragging them up the grassy slope toward the great oak front doors. "I think the feast's already started," said Ron, dropping his trunk at the foot of the front steps and crossing quietly to look through a brightly lit window. "Hey, Harry, come and look! It's the sorting!" Harry hurried over, and together he and Ron peered in at the great hall. Innumerable candles were hovering in mid-air over 4 long, crowded tables, making the golden plates and goblets sparkle. Overhead, the bewitched ceiling, which always mirrored the sky outside, sparkled with stars. Through the forest of pointed black Hogwarts hats, Harry saw a long line of scared-looking first years filling into the hall. Ginny was among them, easily visible because of her vivid Weasley hair. Meanwhile, Professor McGonagall had been bespectacled with her hair in a tight bun, which placing the famous Hogwarts sorting hat on the stool before the newcomers. If you'd like to know how Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets ends, I suggest you check it out at your local library or on the internet. And thank you.
Hello, my name is Joey Gleason, and I'm reading On My Honor by Marion Day. He should have thought of practicing in the river himself. It had been a good idea. Tony was full of good ideas. When they both reached the sandbar, he would apologize, tell Tony he was sorry for what he'd said about his dad. He'd tell him he was sorry about saying Tony would be afraid to swim a little ways too. Made it, he called out, when his hands scraped the bottom with his approach to the sandbar. He stood up, and I beat you too. There was no answer. Joel turned to check. Behind him stretched the river, smooth and glistening, reddish-brown. But there was no sign of Tony. There was nothing to indicate that Joel wasn't alone, hadn't come in the water alone to start with, except, of course, he hadn't. He started to walk back, pushing through the water impatiently, as though there were a crowd holding him back. "Tony!" he yelled. "Where are you?" A faint echo of his voice, high like the meowing of a cat, bouncing back at him from the bluffs. But there was no reply. Joel kept walking forward, pushing against the wall of water. Maybe Tony had turned back. Maybe he was hiding in the bushes somewhere along the bank, watching him, waiting for him to come unglued. "All right, Tony Saprinsky, I know your tricks. Come out wherever you are." There was no answer, not even a giggle from the bushes or some rustling. "Doggone you, Tony, if you mess with my clothes." But he could see his clothes in the pile of them, laying where he had left them, his red t-shirt marking the spot. "Tony!" He began to move forward in lunges, gasping for breath, half choking. Tony had to be hiding. He just had to be off to the side somewhere, laughing. There was no other possibility. It was when Jill stepped off into the nothingness of the deep water. The river bottom suddenly gone from beneath his feet, as if he hit a black hole in space. That he knew. As he choked and fought his way to the surface, he understood everything. Tony couldn't swim. Not really. And Tony had gone under. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to me read. And if you want to find out what happened to Tony, go to your local library and pick up On My Honor.
Hi, my name is Sarah Griffin, and I am reading Just As Long As We're Together by Judy Blume. How? There are ways. I think you're making a big mistake, I said. We both heard the doorbell ring. Allison rushed to the window and looked out. "It's them," she whispered. "I'll hide in the closet." "Allison, I wish you'd..." "Shush." She was in the closet with Maisie. When Mom opened the door, "Is Allison here?" You could tell Allison was trying to keep Maisie from barking by the muffled sounds coming from the closet. "Your parents are downstairs waiting, Allison," Mom said, as if there was nothing unusual going on. As soon as Mom was gone, Allison opened the closet door and came out with Maisie in her arms. "I guess I'll go now," she said. Her voice sounded hoarse. "I guess I'll wait until tomorrow to decide what to do." "You look kind of funny," I told her. "I feel kind of funny too," she said. And then she kneeled over. "Mom," I called. "Come quick." Mom, Gina, and Leon raced to the stairs. "Pumpkin," Leon said. He lifted Allison into the bed. Gina felt her forehead. "She's burning up." "It's probably the flu," I told them. "The kids at school are dropping like fleas." "What's going on?" Bruce asked, standing in the doorway. Allison opened her eyes. "My dog can talk," she said. If you'd like to hear more about the book, check it out at your local library, and thank you for listening to me read.
Hi, I'm Hiroshi, and I'll be reading The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. Keith, the boy in the rumpled shorts and shirt, did not know he was being watched as he entered room 215 of the Mountain View Inn. Neither did his mother and father, who both looked hot and tired. They had come from Ohio and for 5 days had driven across plains and deserts and over mountains to the old hotel in the California foothills, 25 miles from Highway 40. The fourth person entering room 215 may have known he was being watched, but he did not care. He was Matt, 60 if he was a day, who at the moment was the bellboy. Matt also replaced worn-out light bulbs, renewed washers and leaky faucets, carried trays for people who telephoned room service to order food, sent to their rooms, and sometimes prevented children from hitting one another with croquet mallets on the lawn behind the hotel. Now Matt's right shoulder sagged with the weight of one of the bags he was carrying. Here you are, Mr. Gridley. Rooms 215 and 216, he said, setting the smaller of the bags on a luggage rack at the foot of the double bed before he opened the door into the next one. I expect you and Mrs. Gridley will want room 216. It is a corner room with twin beds and a private bath. He carried the heavy bag into the next room where he could be heard opening windows. Outside, a chipmunk chattered in a pine tree. The boy's mother looked critically around room 215 and whispered, I think we should drive back to the main highway. There must be a motel with a vacancy sign someplace. We didn't look long enough. Not another mile, answered the father. I'm not driving another mile on a California highway on a holiday weekend. Did you see the way that truck almost forced us off the road? Dad, did you see those two fellows on motorcycles? Began the boy and stopped, realizing he should not interrupt an argument. But this place is so old, protested the boy's mother, and we have only 3 weeks for our whole trip. We have planned to spend the 4th of July weekend in San Francisco, and we wanted to show Keith as much of the United States as we could. San Francisco will have to wait, and this is part of the United States. Besides, this used to be a very fashionable hotel, said Mr. Gridley. People came from miles around. 50 years ago, said Mrs. Gridley, and they came by horse and buggy. The bellboy returned to room 215. The dining room opens at 6:30, sir. There is a ping pong in the game room, TV in the lobby, and croquet in the back lawn. I'm sure you will be very comfortable. Matt, who has seen guests come and go for many years, knew there were two kinds. Those who thought the hotel was a dreadful old barn of a place, and those who thought it charming and quaint, so quiet and restful. Thank you for hearing me read. If you want to know the rest of the story, check it out at your local library. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Joel, and I'm reading Bernstein Bears in the Bermuda Triangle. Brother Bear and Bonnie Brown had long ago stopped being an item at Bear Country School. When they had first gotten together during a school performance of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, everyone had expected them to become boyfriend and girlfriend. But as things turned out, there was more friendship than romance between them. Brother and Bonnie liked each other, and they liked the same things. Bonnie sometimes did professional acting in plays and TV commercials, and Brother liked acting too. They were both interested in nature and science, and they both liked reading mystery stories. They often went to the movies together. At school, they always sat together at lunch, and every day they walked home together from school. But even though Brother and Bonnie were mainly good friends, there was just enough romantic feeling between them to make Brother jealous whenever Bonnie paid a lot of attention to another guy. That happened from time to time because Bonnie was cute and bright and fun to talk to. Quite a few guys wanted her attention. And Bonnie was also a friendly cub who wouldn't ignore a guy just because Brother got a little jealous. After all, she and Brother weren't really boyfriend and girlfriend. Brother was a popular cub too, and girls liked him. But he was shy. What's more, girls knew that Bonnie liked him. They all wanted to be Bonnie's friend, so they were careful not to make her jealous of them. Once in a while, Queenie McBear would flirt with Brother for a minute or two. But Bonnie knew that Queenie flirted with all the guys, but mostly to make Too Tall Grizzly jealous. So Bonnie wasn't jealous of Queenie. In fact, Bonnie had never been jealous of anyone. Then one fall day, Bonnie's whole world changed. It was lunchtime at Bear Country School. Brother had paid for his lunch and taken his tray to the usual table. Bonnie was next in line. She paid for her lunch too, then started to walk to Brother's table. She had just gone a few short steps when something made her stop and stare. If you want to figure out what happens to Bonnie, check this out at your local library or get this at your local bookstore. Thank you for listening to me read.
Hi, my name is Daniel Pezos, and I'm reading a story from Chicken Soup and the Soul. Bopsy. The 26-year-old mother stared down at her son, who was dying of terminal leukemia. Although her heart was filled with sadness, she also had a strong feeling of determination. Like any parent, she wanted her son to grow up and fulfill all his dreams. Now that was no longer possible. The leukemia would see to that. But she still wanted her son's dreams to come true. She took her son's hand and asked, "Bopsy, did you ever think about what you wanted to be when you grew up? Do you ever dream and wish about what you would do with your life?" He replied, "Mommy, I always wanted to be a fireman when I grew up." His mom smiled back and said, "Let's see if we can make your wish come true." Later that day, she went to her local fire department in Phoenix, Arizona, where she met Fireman Bob, who had a heart as big as Phoenix. She explained her son's final wish and asked if it might be possible to give her 6-year-old son a ride around the block on a fire engine. Fireman Bob said, "Look, we can do better than that. If you'll have your son ready at 7 o'clock Wednesday morning, we'll make him an honorary fireman for the whole day. He can come down to the fire station, eat with us, go out on all our fire calls, the whole 9 yards. And if you'll give us his sizes, we'll get a real fire uniform made for him, with a real hat with the emblem of the Phoenix Fire Department on it, a yellow slicker like we wear in rubber boots. They're all manufactured right here in Phoenix, so we can get them fast." 3 days later, Fireman Bob picked up Bopsy, dressed him in his fire uniform, and escorted him from his hospital bed to the waiting hook and ladder truck. Bopsy got to sit up on the back of the truck and help steer it back to the fire station. He was in heaven. There were 3 fire calls in Phoenix that day, and Bopsy got to go out on all 3 calls. He rode in the different fire engines, the paramedics' van, and even the fire chief's car. He was also videotaped for the local news program. Having his dream come true, with all the love and attention that was lavished upon him, so deeply touched Bopsy that he lived 3 months longer than any doctor thought possible. One night, all of his vital signs began to drop dramatically, and the head nurse, who believed in the hospice concept that no one should die alone, began to call the family members to the hospital. Then she remembered the day Bopsy had spent as a fireman, so she called the fire chief and asked if it would be possible to send a fireman in uniform to the hospital to be with Bopsy as he made his transition. The chief replied, "We can do better than that. We'll be there in 5 minutes. Will you please do me a favor? When you hear the siren screaming and see the lights flashing, will you announce over the PA system that there is not a fire? It's just the fire department coming to see one of its finest members one more time. And will you open the window to his room? Thanks." About 5 minutes later, a hook and ladder truck arrived at the hospital, extended its ladder up to Bopsy's 3rd floor open window, and 14 firemen and 2 firewomen climbed up the ladder into Bopsy's room. With his mother's permission, they hugged him and held him and told him how much they loved him. Okay. And if you'd like to hear the rest of this story, check this book out at your local library, and thank you for listening to me read.
Hi, I'm Kelsey now, and I'm going to read a part from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on. "Why is Bane so angry?" he asked. "What was that thing you saved me from anyway?" Firenez slowed to a walk, warned Harry to keep his head bowed in case of low-hanging branches, but did not answer Harry's question. They made their way through the trees in silence for so long that Harry thought Firenez didn't want to talk to him anymore. What was that hooded thing anyway? They were passing through a particularly dense patch of trees. However, when Firenez suddenly stopped. "Harry Potter, do you know what unicorn blood is used for?" "No," said Harry, startled by the odd question. "But that hooded figure was drinking from a unicorn. We've only used the horn and tail in potions." "That is because it is a monstrous thing to slay a unicorn, and," said Firenez, "only one who has nothing to lose and everything to gain would commit such a crime. The blood of a unicorn will help you live, but if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips." Harry stared back at Fire Niz's head, which was dappled silver in the moonlight. But who would be that desperate, he wondered. If you're going to be cursed forever, death's better, isn't it? It is, Fire Niz agreed, unless all you need to stay alive long enough to drink something else. Something that will bring you back to full strength and power. Something that will mean you can never die. Mr. Potter, do you know what is hidden at the school at this very moment? The Sorcerer's Stone, of course, the elixir of life, but I don't understand who. Can you think of nobody who has waited many years to return to power, who has clung to life awaiting their chance? It was as though an iron fist had clenched suddenly around Harry's heart. Over the rustling of trees, he seemed to hear once more what Hagrid had told him on the night they had met. Some say he died. Codswallop, in my opinion. Don't know if he had enough human left in him to die. Do you mean, Harry croaked, that it is Vol? And if you want to find out what happens to Harry or who the cloaked figure is, check it out at your local library. If you like the book, you can check out Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan Chartier. I am reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm going to read a little bit for you out of the book. Okay. Hello, Harry Potter. My name is Tom Riddle. How did you come by my diary? These words too faded away, but not before Harry had started to scribble back. Someone tried to flush it down a toilet. He waited eagerly for Riddle's reply. Lucky that I recorded my memories in some more lasting way than in ink, but I always knew that there would be those who would not want this diary read. What do you mean? Harry scrawled, blotting the page with his excitement. I mean that this diary holds memories of terrible things, things that were covered up, things that happened at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. That's where I am now, Harry wrote quickly. I'm at Hogwarts and horrible stuff's been happening. Do you know anything about the Chamber of Secrets? His heart hammering, Harry's reply came quickly. Riddle's reply came quickly. His writing becoming untidier, as though he was hurrying to tell all he knew. Of course I know about the Chamber of Secrets. In my day, they told us it was a legend, that it did not exist, but this was a lie. In my 5th year, the chamber was open and the monster attacked several students, finally killing one. I caught the person who'd opened the chamber and he was expelled. But the headmaster, Professor Dippet, ashamed that such a thing had happened at Hogwarts, forbade me never to tell the truth. A story was given out that the little girl had died in a freak accident. They gave me a nice, shiny, engraved trophy for my trouble and warned me to keep my mouth shut. But I knew it would happen again. The monster lived on, and the one who had the power to release it was not in prison. Harry, nearly upset in his ink bottle in his hurry to write back, It's happening now again. There have been 3 attacks, and no one seems to know who's behind it. Who was it last time? I can show you if you like, came Riddle's reply. You don't have to take my word for it. I can take you inside my memory of the night when I caught him. Harry hesitated, the quill suspended over the diary. What did Riddle mean? How could it be taken inside somebody else's memory? He glanced nervously at the door to the dormitory, which was growing dark. When he looked at the diary, he saw fresh words forming. Let me show you. Thank you for listening to me reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. If you want to find out what happened to Harry and Tom Riddle, then you can check your book out at the local library or store. I think your parents will enjoy you reading Harry Potter because it's such a good book and there's 3 of them and it just keeps you reading and reading.
Hi, my name is Allison and I'm going to be reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. Harry spent a lot of time over the next few days dodging out of sight whenever he saw Gladgory Lockhart coming down a corridor. Harder to avoid was Colin Creevey, who seemed to have memorized Harry's schedule. Nothing seemed to give Colin a bigger thrill than to say, "Oh, all right, Harry," 6 or 7 times a day, and hear "Hello, Colin" back, however exasperated Harry sounded when he said it.
Hedwig was still angry with Harry about the disastrous car journey, and Ron's wand was still malfunctioning, surpassing itself on Friday morning by shooting out of Ron's hand in charms and hitting tiny old Professor Flitwick squarely between the eyes, creating a large throbbing green boil where it had struck. So with one thing and another, Harry was quite glad to reach the weekend. He, Ron, and Hermione were planning to visit Hagrid on Saturday morning. Harry, however, was shaken awake several hours earlier than he would have liked by Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. "What's the matter?" said Harry groggily. "Quidditch practice," said Wood. "Come on." Harry squinted at the window. There was a thin mist hanging across the pink and gold sky. Now that he was awake, he couldn't understand how he could have slept through the racket the birds were making. "Oliver," Harry croaked, "it's the crack of dawn." "Exactly," said Wood. He was a tall and burly sixth year, and at the moment his eyes were gleaming with crazed enthusiasm. "It's part of our new training program. Come on, grab your broom and let's go," said Wood heartily. "None of the other teams have started training yet. We're going to be the first off the mark this year." Yawning and shivering slightly, Harry climbed out of bed and tried to find his Quidditch ropes. "Good man," said Wood. "Meet you on the field in 15 minutes." When he had found his scarlet team robes and pulled on his cloak for warmth, Harry scribbled a note to Ron explaining where he'd gone and went down the spiral staircase to the common room, his Nimbus 2000 on his shoulder. He had just reached the portrait hole when there was a clatter behind him, and Colin Creevy came dashing down the spiral staircase, his camera swinging madly around his neck, and something clutched in his hand. "I heard someone saying your name on the stairs, Harry. Look what I've got here. I've had it developed. I want to show you." If you want to find out more about what happens to Harry Potter and check out this book at your local library.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to me read.
Hello, my name is Sydney, and I'm reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Tom, no answer. What's gone with that boy, I wonder? You, Tom. No answer. The old lady pulled her spectacles down and looked over them and about the room. She put them up and looked out under them. She seldom or never looked through them, for so small a thing as a boy, they were her state care and pride of her heart. They were built for style, not service. She could have seen through a pair of stove lids just as well. She looked perplexed for a moment and then said, not fiercely, but still loud enough for the furniture to hear, "Well, I lay, if I get a hold of you, I'll—" She did not finish, for by this time she was bending down and punching under the bed with the broom, so she needed a breath to persuade the punches with. She resurrected nothing but a cat. I never did see a beat of that boy. She went to the open door and stood and looked out among the tomato vines and jimson weeds that consisted of the garden. No Tom. She lifted up her voice at an angle calculated for distance and shouted, "You, Tom!" There was a slight noise behind her, and she turned just in time to seize the small boy by the slack of his roundabouts and arrest of his flight. "There, I might have thought of that closet. What have you been doing in there?" "Nothing. Look at your hands and your mouth. What is that turd?" "I don't know, Aunt." "Well, I know. It's jam. That's what it is. 40 times I've said if you didn't let that jam alone, I'll skin you. Hand me that switch." The switch hovered in the air. The peril's desperate. "My, look behind you, Aunt." The old lady whirled around and snatched her skirts out of danger. The lad fled in the instant, scrambled up the Highmore fence, and disappeared over it. His Aunt Polly stood surprised a moment and then broke into a gentle laugh. "Hang that boy, can't I never learn anything." Thank you for listening to me read, and if you want to find out what happens to Tom, you can check this book out at your local library.
Reading is cool!
Where do you go to school?
Pleasant Valley!
And what grade are you in?
5th!
And what's cool?
Reading!